Thanks for making the time, Marco. I know that you're busy. Are you going on a holiday anytime soon?
Thanks to you. I have my coffee with me as well.
Excellent. I actually have my espresso here too as well.
Great.
Happy to have you in Espresso 4.0. We can jump right into it, but before we do, it'd be good to know a little bit more about you. Can you give us a little bit of intro of who Marco Piccio is?
Yes, of course. So I have 15 years experience in continuous improvement, process excellence, and business transformation in different industries.
Mm-hmm.
I have an experience in manufacturing, in electronics, even in service B2C. I work for Air Rent-A-Car.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm working for CDL, part of the Travel Group, where I'm managing business transformation at group level, at global level. And so my entire career, I would say, is focused on improvement and recently on business and digital transformation.
Perfect. In fact, that's what I want to talk to you about. You obviously have a multifaceted experience in continuous improvement, and now you're in a part of you're running the projects in digital transformation, and that's all the hype right now, right? Industry 4.0, smart manufacturing is the holy grail, and one of the ways we get to it was with digital transformation, and a lot of companies are embarking on that kind of adventure. However, they run a risk of taking the wrong turn, getting the wrong tool without answering a very important question, and that's why. Why are we going through digital transformation? Why are we getting a tool, developing it or buying it? How important is it that the companies answer this before they embark on a project of digital transformation?
Well, answering the question why has to be the starting point. I would say it's mandatory. Mm-hmm. Being able to clearly define and write down the why of a project, program, or a simple initiative is key for two main reasons. First one is that it helps clarifying the real need for a particular tool or system, or in which terms and in which framework that is needed. This is particularly important for the project leader to clarify the real reason why the initiative is needed. And it's extremely useful also for a deep discussion with the main stakeholders, including the project sponsor. This is quite a turning point to me, because sometimes it happens that the leader is not able to explain the why. And if this happens, we have an issue and we should question the need for that project or that specific tool. The second reason, which is even more important, I would say, is that being able to explain the why is especially key, because you have to explain it to end users. Mm-hmm. Let's say in general that the end users are the internal customers of your system implementation, right? So this concept is perfectly synthesized by Simon Sinek's famous sentence: people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. For sure, you know that, you're absolutely familiar with that. And start with the explanation of the why is fundamental to facilitate, involve, and engage end users. Let's say in general that it's the foundation of change management. Mm-hmm. And there is no worse thing than jumping in explaining what people have to do, how the new tool is working, without even explained why we need it and why we are going for this implementation first. That's why when I provide methodological support to business, all the templates I build for a workshop or a training session have the same first page, which is why this project.
That makes perfect sense. And that's a very good practice. Interesting to hear. Also, it's when you said that your clients are actually the end user, your actual colleagues as well, later down the line. Let's unpack what you've just said, in fact, because there's a couple of things that I wanted to get into with you. Now, you've mentioned different stakeholders, the importance of change management and training, and I want to kind of nitpick a little bit on those. So let's assume you've answered your question why. You've chosen your vendor, or you've tasked your team with developing a solution, a tool that's going to help with digital transformation, or it's part of your digital transformation strategy. But that's only the beginning of the battle, just like you said. A lot of companies run the risk of failing in the implementation phase because of culture, right? That's where change management comes in. And can you expand a little bit on that, on why and how culture is important, how we avoid the risks of, having that be the reason of a failed project, and instead, what are some of the solutions?
Definitely. Culture is fundamental for a very simple reason, that technology in the end is an enabler, but companies are made of people. And systems and tools are driven by people. People have to make the best use of those tools and release their full potential to increase the value delivered to final customers. Mm-hmm. Let's say that people are the driving force empowering digital transformation. In the digital transformation era, the motto should not be technology first, but instead people first. And approaching transformation from a human perspective is essential, because people have to experience this change as a positive one, and not only they have to embrace it, but they also have to become enablers of the change. And here we come back to the previous point about the importance of explaining the why. And as you mentioned correctly, this has to be leveraged by change management. Value proposition is only one part of the equation, though. What is really key is the change of mindset, mm-hmm. and it might be particularly painful, especially for old organizations with the old-style hierarchies, let's say, old-style management. Mm-hmm. That's why it's important to sustain digital transformation since the very beginning. As cultural change might take time, it's not something that happens overnight, and especially digital transformation, let's say, rise of technology, much faster than the cultural change. Let's say that technology change, technology transformation, digital transformation is exponential, while if we are lucky, cultural change is linear, or is even slower than that. A couple of points that can facilitate this are to try to instill the concept of uncertainty, and this can be counterintuitive, but this is to be seen in opposition to certainty, which is somehow bad, because it is associated with the idea of steadiness. Mm-hmm. The worst thing is to hear, we have always done like that. And how many times you heard that? I heard that a lot of times, and it always hurt me when I hear that. But when you have new ideas, new tool, and a new way of working, that is associated with uncertainty, because you have to embrace that. You have to think that things might change. Things might change quickly, and this comes together with the concept of the sense of urgency. Mm-hmm. We need to do it in a reasonable time frame. If we do a transformation in a digital environment 10 years, I'd be out of business. And those two concepts are important, because working on those means that you have to work on the mindset, and you have to work since the very beginning on that. and you have to work every day because this is a continuous process. Last but not least, the most important thing probably, you have to listen to your customer because you might think to know what your customer wants, but customer perspective evolves almost as quickly as technology does. And being able to involve your customer in the transformation journey and make sure to ask the right questions and, more important, listen to them is key to be on the right path.
Gotcha. Marco, you put a lot of effort actually in training of the staff in adopting new tools that you acquire as part of the digital transformation in order to communicate its purpose, right?
Yeah.
Because that's important for a number of reasons. And I'd like you to kind of explain us why that's important and what are some of the traps that people or companies rather fall in without transparency across the stakeholders and the right communication as to the purpose of certain tools as well as the training in terms of adoption and use.
You're right, Philip. As you said, this is a dangerous pitfall, as you might have the money and resources to implement a fantastic state-of-the-art and fancy tool, and then nobody's using it. If I look back at my experience, one reason could be that we have failed explaining the why, as we said in the beginning, or that we are not yet in the right mindset, and we come to the second point about culture. But there is another key reason. It's that very often a proper training is missing. I would not say that the training is missing at all. Sometimes it happens, but a proper training is missing. And training is a fundamental element of business transformation process. Too often I've seen a new system implemented very often by an external supplier, and the training is just the technical manual provided by the supplier. Then you won't be surprised if the end user adoption is low, or the tool is used at 5% of its potential, for instance. The key, the first point is to have change agents or process drivers. Companies call them in different ways. Those are internal people that are taking care of training, starting from training material. And again, when we talk about change agents, we connect to the previous point. You have people that are part of your company that are not only embracing the change, but they are involved, they are enablers of the change. And it's important because they know the culture of the company, so they know how to touch the right point, how to deliver the right message. But coming back to the training, to have an effective, and to the training material, to have an effective training, like we said, first of all, you have to explain, you have to start by explaining the why. But then, what is also sometimes missing, you have to explain the process. The process behind the tool is important because, well, first of all, you have to have a process behind. And if not, if you discover you don't, we have an issue because we might question how the system has been designed. So process has to be considered since the phase of designing the new system. But then process also helps understanding the system from a non-technical point of view. This is key to achieve the end user adoption, as process is in the end the way of working that has inspired the system implementation. So if you know that, you know also, you understand why you do certain things. So it's somehow part of the process of explaining the new tool. I would like to add a bonus topic here. I've been facing the challenge on how to deliver training to a large, not homogeneous population. And this can be also a challenge, a risk, because you might be tempted to go back to the idea of having the supplier providing the training, or you might feel overwhelmed by this. How can you build up training material, training sessions if population is so large? Do I have to provide tons of training material to match the different population I have to train? What I found as very useful is the concept, and what I have adopted as well is the concept of modular training. So you can split your training material into different sections, different modules. Typically, just to make a dummy example, you might have an awareness module, a process understanding module, and a technical module, which is the deep dive into the system. This is useful because you might play with these modules, and you prepare just once your material, but then you can play with the modules. You can adapt the training material to the audience, and then, for example, people that are just stakeholders that just are, let's say, touched at eye level by the system, they can stay with the awareness module. While people that are more involved day by day, they can go for the process understanding module on top of the awareness one. And then you can add the technical module to people that have to work in a deeper way with the system, with the tool. And this is just, again, a simple dummy example, but just to understand that you can play in different ways. And this is an approach that I found very useful to touch a large, not homogeneous population. And it works pretty well because it reduces also the effort of the change agent or process driver in building a training material. And of course, on top of that, you always have the explanation of the why as very first point of your training material to introduce the topic. And this is key also for communication purpose, because you always remind people why we are doing that before jumping into the explanation of the system, of the tool.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it makes it more valuable to the audience. If this particular module does not really concern what your day-to-day looks like, you're not going to be using these features, then exactly. Why sit in a training session, particularly if you're an operator that needs to be, attentive to the machines most of the time, or if you're even a C-level exec that needs to be in other meetings. So it makes a lot of sense. You've mentioned a little bit, Note, that I'm curious about in your experience. And some vendors provide just a training material, or rather a manual on how to use a tool, or sometimes they provide training by themselves. Do you ever collaborate with suppliers? How important is that supplier is involved in the training? Should they be involved at all? You tell me.
It should be involved. I didn't want to say that supplier should be excluded, also because very often, I would say 95% of the times the implementation is led by suppliers, or at least is done by suppliers, development of the tool and its implementation. I have to say this has to be a partnership work, a joint work between the supplier and the internal people. What I was questioning a little bit is when we delegate everything to the supplier, including the training. But as I said, the training is key. So for sure, there has to be a technical part, and suppliers are very often our partners. So they know our company, our companies, they work with us. And so let's say they are key in helping us, not only delivering the system, but also in building the training material, especially concerning the technical part. What I'm saying is that delegating in full that to suppliers might be dangerous, because in the end, the supplier is providing something, is providing the system implementation. They provide the technical material. They might provide also the training, but then in a few weeks, they're gone.
Yeah.
And so let's say we have a change in the process after a couple of months, which can be easily configured in the tool, but this might not be reflected anymore in the training material, for instance. Another trap is that we might have a system implemented. We might have a change in this system implemented. We might end up with a training that is well done from a technical perspective, but the technical manual very often is covering all the span of the system, which includes also parts of areas that are not useful to most of the end users.
Yeah.
And here we come back to the previous point of the modular training.
Yeah.
You might have this big manual that might be as big as a dictionary, and so you have people that they don't even open it.
Yeah, it's intimidating. You see that in like, oh my God, I'll get to it sometime.
You know, it happens to me as well, and I should not say that, but if I am in a 5 hours training and I open a presentation that is 200 slides, I say, oh my God. And you also have to pay attention to that. And the concept of modularity also goes in that direction. Not only that, you have also different ways today to deliver training. You can have e-learning, you can have smaller modules that are delivered online. People can do that whenever they want. So, but coming back to your question, it's not bad that the suppliers are involved. On the contrary, it's very likely that the suppliers are involved. They just have to be partnering with the company's change agents, especially when it comes to training, so to deliver the result to the end users, because this has to be somehow prepared, and it has to come with the why, with the proper communication. And for that, we need to be fully into the company culture. And so that's why it's important to, I would say in the end, a good partnership is important.
Yep. Yep. In fact, what you're saying is really echoing what I've been talking to a lot of people about, that any successful digital transformation involves both parties, the supplier and the customer, the factory that's going through the transformation. It's this partnership, as you said, because you have to drive it internally in order for it to be successful. And the supplier needs to be involved in both the implementation, training, and ideally customer care later down the line for any changes or problems that might occur once the tool has been adopted. Perfect. Thank you. Let's relax a little bit. We don't have to talk about digital transformation all the time. I mean, that is what I talk about all the time anyway. But a little bit more about you. If I called you on a Sunday, 2 p.m., what would I be interrupting you in?
Well, luckily, since a few months now, probably you would be interrupting me in the middle of a trip, because I love traveling. So whenever I can, in weekends, I pack my bag with my girlfriend and we run away somewhere, exploring a new city or a new place. I think travel is one of the best experiences you might have, because you get to know new culture, you got to learn a lot from that, and it's really my passion. So probably if you asked the same question a couple of years ago, unfortunately, I would have answered I'm home reading or watching Netflix, but now I'm back traveling. So you would be interrupting me traveling. I would be happy for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad you're back on the road. What's the next trip that you're planning, if you have any?
I'm going to Malta. Nice. In a few days, which was already planned before the pandemic. So we just put that on pause, and now it's time to explore.
Have you been to Malta? Have you been to Malta already?
No, it's the first time.
Okay, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, but it will be very hot, Marco. It's July or August when you're going, right?
Yeah, I'm going in 10 days. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be very hot. But I'm sure you'll enjoy. The sea is nice. The cities are beautiful as well. Yeah, I love to travel myself as well. I'm going to Paris in less than a month. I was visiting home in Serbia just 3 weeks ago. And then hopefully I'll get to see the beach in September. We'll see. Italy, Greece. I don't know. We'll see. I know you're biased.
Italy, yeah, if you come to Italy, just give me a call and we can meet.
Perfect. Thank you. And what's the coolest thing you've seen recently in like Industry 4.0 or tech innovation?
Well, I have to say there are a lot of things that I am amazed by the innovation brought by Industry 4.0. I have to say in my recent experience, what I've seen, what has amazed me is probably augmented reality. That is why I've experienced that myself when I started working. My first experience was with Magneti Marelli, the electronics manufacturer for automotive. Mm-hmm. And in 2009, I have spent a lot of time in India as part of a team for the startup of the new Magneti Marelli electronic system plant near New Delhi. I remember then when I was installing the testing lines. At the time I was a process engineer for testing. When I was installing the testing lines and I had a trouble, that was really a trouble because I was in India, 1,000 miles away from my office. I had to wait for the right time to come to call the office, and everything was happening on the phone. So, okay, connect that cable or do that thing, and it is extremely painful if you do that just by having someone guiding you on the phone. Now what I've seen with augmented reality, you put on glasses and it's amazing. You can really have a remote assistance or a remote training and have a live experience. And this is truly amazing. It really breaks the distance barriers. And this is really amazing to me because probably I experienced myself that in the past.
You could easily answer your own why you would have needed augmented reality in those cases, right?
Definitely.
It's super cool technology. I have to admit, I've been seeing a lot of it on LinkedIn. We were in Hanover Mess just a month ago, and we saw some pretty cool applications as well. So it's pretty awesome, and I'm kind of excited to see where it goes. Thank you, Marco. Love chatting with you, having coffee. Always welcome an Espresso 4.0. If you're ever here in Luxembourg on your travels, you know who to give a call. Likewise, if I end up in Italy, I'll know who to ping and see if they can provide some assistance or tips. Although I am pretty good at maneuvering in Rome. I've lived there for almost a decade. And yeah, looking forward to talking to you in the future.
Very good. Thanks a lot to you, Philip, and talk soon. Maybe see you soon.
Maybe, hopefully. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.